Good evening and welcome. The time is 7:02 p.m. I'd like to call to order the Tuesday, March 4th, 2025 School Committee Special Meeting held in the School Committee Conference Room of the Stoughton Public Schools District Office at 31 Pierce Street, Stoughton in Massachusetts. This meeting is being recorded by SMAC for future broadcasting. Please rise if you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, could I have a motion to open the special meeting?
So moved.
All right, that motion is made by Lindsay. A second?
Second.
Oh, seconded by Armando. It's been moved and seconded. Roll call vote.
Aye.
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 All right, that's carried 5-0. Meeting is officially open and started. So the first item on our agenda, actually technically second, is the superintendent succession planning. This meeting is kind of our opportunity to discuss our feedback on the interview that we had last time we met. Just as a quick refresher, on January 28th, 2025, Dr. Joseph Baeta informed the committee of his intention to retire at the end of his contract on June 30th, 2026, and we accepted that letter on February 11th. At that time, the school committee established a superintendent succession plan working group with Lindsay Kreckler and Chris Shannon to put together a process and criteria for the committee to use to evaluate candidates for the position of superintendent. The committee considered its options, which would include things like performing a nationwide search that has its own significant costs and takes about a year or two, or in some district cases, they're in their third year, or looking within for a qualified candidate. We did note that prior to Dr. Baeta, we had done two wider searches within a very short time period. And according, looked at the MASC, the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, and noted that approximately half of the districts that do those wide searches anymore end up going with their internal candidate. So we had concerns about kind of the small pool of candidates that have been available the past few years, including the candidates that we've drawn from in the past, especially with the specific needs of this district. So Dr. Baeta had recommended a strong internal candidate, Ms. Juliette Miller, who is the current Stoughton High School principal. The working group evaluated our internal candidate against the criteria that they established, and they recommended the school committee move forward with that candidate, which we voted to do on February 11th. And then we invited Ms. Miller to an interview, which we held on February 25th. So that's where things stand. And just a reminder, this is kind of difficult evaluating an internal candidate because we all know and we all have Julie's stories, but we're looking at our candidate against the criteria that we have from the working group with the materials that she's provided to us with the interview that we had, and so that's what we're going to be focusing on tonight. We could go about this a couple ways. We could have the discussion and then put a motion on the table. The last time that we had the superintendent search, we put the motion on the table first in order to have the discussion, but a working group, I don't know if you have any thoughts about how to proceed, if you wanted to review specific criteria, or if you wanted to move ahead.
I think I can go ahead and make a motion, and then we can do discussion if that works.
Yes, that's fine. So we'll be able to have a discussion at that point.
Okay, so I would like to move that pending successful contract negotiations, the school committee appoint Juliette Miller to be the superintendent of schools starting June 2026. No, July 2026.
2026.
Yes, thank you. July 2026.
All right, so that motion was made by Lindsay. Do I have a second? Again, this is just to put it on the table.
Second.
All right. I'll give it to Armando. So that's been moved and seconded. So before we vote, at this point, we are going to open it for discussion. We can go in order, and everybody can have a chance to share their thoughts. Armando, would you like to start us off, or would you like to?
I'll start us off, I guess.
Sure.
Well, I'd like to thank Mrs. Miller for coming. I think that was great, and I'd love to thank her, especially since all of us questioned her at the same time. That's considered generally a hostile interview process. Usually it's one by one, but of course with the open meeting we don't have much of a choice. And apologize for doing it to her with all of us at the same time. But it was a good interview process overall. Appreciated all the questions, the scenarios and so on. That really asked some tough questions of her, and I thought she did a very good job in answering them, to my satisfaction at this point. I wish we had more time to ask her additional questions. I thought the time, and that's our own school committee issue, not Mrs. Miller. We had more time to ask her, but I'm pretty sure she doesn't mind talking with one of us occasionally, but that's just minor thing, nothing that would have to be in open meeting. And of course, if something comes up, we discuss it back here again. But I thought everything went well.
Any feedback, I guess, the criteria, or you had the specific questions, you had some great questions about, engaging parents and about modern, kind of what modern academic program she would bring. Do you have any feedback based on those questions? I think those are great questions. You had so many great questions. I know you really had like a ton of great questions to ask.
Yeah, I mean, the modern teaching techniques I'd really be interested in. I think she was up to date on it, but it's something I think all superintendents should always be aware of, and perhaps that's something that she can spend a little bit more time in looking over. Frankly, I don't know what the modern teaching techniques are, but I know there are some out there that, for example, social and emotional learning is one that I didn't know about until coming onto the school committee. So I'm sure there are many other techniques there that may be suited for Stoughton, that can give Stoughton kids a leg up without increasing costs. And of course, if we can do both, bring it to the next level and also maintain the cost, it would be wonderful for the superintendent to always be aware of those things. Another area which I think I would encourage all superintendents to go into is that the subcommittee put together a scenario of when the school burns down, hoping all superintendents or potential superintendents could spend a little bit more time in analyzing insurance policies, for example. I've never read an insurance policy, but I do have a bit of background in insurance, to determine what options are available. Some insurance policy would actually say they will provide money to rent a space while that one is being repaired. And I think superintendents needs to be aware of the policy and what it states, because I'm pretty sure that the schools have policies in the case something disastrous was to happen. And the last comment I have, I think all superintendents should do, is the absolute need to work with the town. As everyone knows, it's not always easy to work with the town, but no matter how hard it is, every superintendent should make an effort to work with the town to make things more efficient. I mean, the capital planning, which I thought was a great idea, is an example that the town and the schools can join forces to come up with some really good ideas that will make things smoother and keep the costs down of maintenance of schools and, of course, town properties at the same time. It's something which two birds in the bush, I mean, what's that saying? A bird in the hand's worth more than two in the bush, on which, when we partner up with the town, we can save all taxpayers some money and be substantially more efficient than we can be as an individual. I mean, I'd go as far as to say superintendents should help the town and the schools buy office supplies at the same time. Maybe a larger quantity would reduce the cost per sheet of paper. When we need to buy copy machines or all sorts of supplies that are common, combining them together is something I would love to see the superintendent do, and just to keep reducing the cost, or at least saving money where we can when we partner with a willing partner, of course. Sorry, that was a lot of, but.
Oh, always good to know.
All
thoughts.
my ideas.
Yes. Well, thank you, Armando. Lindsay?
Yeah, I think I would like to echo what you shared about gratitude for the candidates' time and energy put in. I know it's challenging to be interviewed by 5 people on television, and also we did ask her to do quite a bit of prep for the interview, which I think I really appreciated getting to see that. I think that's something as the succession working group we talked about doing, because it gave us an opportunity to see how she would respond to situations rather than responding to conceptual questions. It gave us a chance to be like, okay, in this situation, what would you actually do? So I think I really appreciated the energy put into that. I feel really confident based on what we heard and saw that Ms. Miller will make a effective, highly qualified superintendent. I heard a lot of threads in her responses about stakeholder input, relying on experts, stakeholders with expertise. I think, Armando, you said something about that just now, about modern teaching techniques and all of that. I think what I heard multiple times in her responses is just this emphasis on getting buy-in and leading people as humans, and really building culture up from there. I also heard pieces about moving at the speed of trust and making sure there's a shared vision and direction before, and working to really invest people in the building blocks of a new strategy as she's doing strategic planning. And I heard some pieces about shared purpose and common good, which I think is really, I just love to hear that at the district level. I think that goes a long way in terms of setting a vision, in terms of thinking about why everybody is here, cares about students, and is moving in the same direction. I heard some pieces that were very asset-based, which I think is important as opposed to deficit-based in the ways that she was talking about students and just thinking about what do students, I think often when we have conversations about students and the challenges that they face, it can get easy to fall into sort of deficit mindsets where we think about the gaps. And I heard her really not do that and really focus on what students do bring to the table and the assets. So really appreciated that. I also heard some threads about making schools places of joy and treating families as partners, which I would love to see her bring that to life at the district level. I think obviously she has incredible experience with the building project. The high school really speaks to that. She has experience leading through crisis, including a pandemic. And I think she has the structure. I heard an emphasis on structures and systems at the root in order to make strategic planning possible, to start sort of at the basics for long-term change, which I think is an exciting orientation to take. So I think if we vote to appoint Ms. Miller our next superintendent, I think she'll be able to hit the ground running in a lot of ways. And I think by making the appointment now for the 26-27 school year, she's actually really positioned for over a year of on-the-job training, which can come in handy to address some pieces that we might want her to get some practice or some reps with in that year, or to ask her more questions, as Armando shared. So I think that she would have the opportunity to work with a team of veteran district leaders to really take that high school specific experience that she's built up over the last decade plus, and level it up to the district level, which I think she absolutely has shown us the capacity to do using the evaluation criteria, her resume, everything she shared with us about her thought process and her planning process for those challenge scenarios, which were really challenging. So kudos to her. So yeah, I will stop there. But yeah, just very excited about her candidacy.
Well, thank you, Lindsay. You stole some of my talking points, so now I have to come up with, no.
I mean, feel free to repeat them.
That's true. No, I asked Joe actually about the building project experience as well, and so that was one of the really important pieces to me. And hearing Ms. Miller explain that she had been through the entire process from the beginning all the way through the end and the post-planning was really helpful to think about. I know we've had questions from the town about how are you planning to take care of these buildings once they've been built, and to have her be able to step in and explain that experience, but also looking forward to the middle school project, having someone who has been there and argued before the MSBA just to get this on the board. That's also that was really important to me to have somebody who's had that experience with buildings and facilities care as well. I think a couple other things. One of the points that the working group brought was the familiarity with Stoughton. And I thought that was really important to hear more about her experience as a student, as a teacher, and as administrator. I thought that was really evident in the community resources that she was emphasizing, especially in the scenario that we posited about the school burning down, where she thought through what spaces in town would be available, what would be drawbacks to using places like the Y or the senior center. She, thought about how would she use the existing schools to do that, and we had Dr. Betas had his own kind of ideas of what would happen, so it was interesting to hear another idea from someone who's very familiar with that. I also liked her building on that idea of families as partners, building on using community resources. We've gotten to use the Oasis a lot more recently, using the Stoughton Public Library as a really important resource. That resource is a really exciting possibility to me, and I really like that she had thought through what was around town and how to use that. And to really help students and families. I liked her working with building relationships with faculty, working towards that common good. Also the communication that she stressed, you can have disagreement, but if you're transparent about what you're working towards, then that helps people get on board and work towards that common goal, and that she would bring that to working with the school committee. I really appreciated that. I think you both have already hit around a lot of points, but those are some of the things that stuck out specifically to me. I'll hand it over to Chris.
Thank you. Do my best to leave a few for you.
That's all right. I'm good.
We need to mix it up every once in a while.
Yeah.
So I also appreciated the intentionality that Julie brought to the assignment. And I think what's really interesting is not just her response to the two scenarios, but the way she communicated that response, the way she organized that information, and the way she bulleted it out. It was simple. It was easy to read. It wasn't 8 pages of paragraphs, which, as an English major, I might have been tempted to do. But it was very much to the point, concise, but thorough. And I really appreciated that. There is tremendous evidence in her resume, in knowing her, through bringing two students through the high school, and through her responses to our questions, that she is an excellent communicator. I have seen her responses quite a few times when there have been incidences at the high school, many of them false alarms, but some of them not so much. And her ability to write very effective communications to parents in time of crises, I think, is really paramount to this day and age. She also has leadership experience through several crises already. New building project, as you stated, she's seen that from beginning to end, and it was not without some controversy. And she handled that with grace and coolness, and I love that she brings that. She doesn't ratchet up the emotion in the room, but she typically leads with facts and empathy, and I find that very effective. But she's also led the high school through COVID, which also was rife with controversy, to the students, to the families, and to the staff. And I thought she did that very effectively. So I think it's really important that we mention those things, even though they weren't evident in her responses, because I think they were equally important. She's very good at building trust, which we need. We are in sore need of trust, not only just with our students and our families, but also with town residents who do not have children in the school system. So I saw those as huge strengths. Also, Catherine, she's experienced the school district as a student, and then as a teacher, as a department head, and as a principal. So having that multifaceted view of the school system, I think, gives her additional perspectives to bring to the table and additional considerations that others may not have brought. And I think that if we had had someone with that level of local experience in the past, we might not have cycled through several superintendents so quickly. So I think that's really important. She is a strong collaborator, and she doesn't lead with ego. I really appreciate that about her. And I think that's going to be really important in making productive relationships with the town. However, being someone who is completely new to this role, having watched it from afar, I do see some growth areas, and I think we are uniquely situated to be able to provide some level of guidance on where we might be able to grow her skill set so she can really hit the ground running when she steps in under the tutelage of a very experienced superintendent. And being able to do that over the full course of the life cycle of a school year is an unbelievable opportunity for us. And I think if people wonder about the timing, that is part of the reason behind the timing, is to make sure that we can plan, because we have to figure out how are we going to organize that on-the-job training. You know, how are we going to create space in her more packed schedule than the superintendent's to allow that opportunity for mentorship, for shadowing, for visiting other schools, other districts, getting to know the building administrators. So I want to make sure that we provide her with a plan and a support over the course of this year to really make sure that we are positioning her for success. So the growth areas that I noticed, one is just she has some connections with local leadership, but not the one she's going to have to deal with as a superintendent. So I think that is one of the first things that Joe will be able to help her with. I'd like to see her skill up in a budget. It's very different managing kind of ancillary classroom costs versus a $65 million budget, and knowing how to rearrange it, how to make up for shortfalls, how to rely on your fiscal staff, when you need to ask for help through grants or aid. There's a lot more complexity there that I would never be able to do. So I think having a year-long opportunity to kind of skill up there, I think would be very much in her best interest. I would love to see her scale up a little more in data and effective use of data and making data-informed decisions, not just looking at survey results, but also working on creating discernible targets, data-based goal targets, rather than we just want to increase or improve. Let's create some concrete targets, interim milestones, and figure out what we need to do to get through that and work on that as a team. So I would really, and benchmarking against other districts as well. That was one of the things that I found lacking in her response to the MCAS is, well, was that happening throughout the state? That wasn't brought up once. Is it happening throughout the nation? Not brought up once, because you are going to have very different strategies that you're going to look at to figure out how to deal with that locally, depending on how broad that context of the issue is. So those are the key points. The other thing that I do want to surface is culture, and Karen, I believe you're also going to hit on that. But I want to say that I have heard from parents that we have had staff of color at the high school who did not feel supported by other staff, were made uncomfortable, and made to leave. And that troubles me. And I don't know how much of that was common knowledge, but I would want to make sure, because I know that we really do want to do everything we can to ensure that our teaching staff throughout our schools reflects our student population so that they truly feel a sense of belonging when they're in the classroom. So what can we do, what can she do to start putting pieces in place to lay the seeds for that continue building of a district culture? What does that look like? So those are the things that I would love to see her work on, but I think she is a very strong candidate for all of the other reasons that we've mentioned. Everyone has growth areas. We just have a unique opportunity to work on them over the next year.
And I would point out, we have a superintendent who's mentored 3 superintendents into the position. So this would be the 4th that he would get to mentor. So we have not only an experienced superintendent, but a superintendent experienced in mentoring. So we're even more
Yeah.
unique.
Yeah.
I will pass it on to Karen. Thanks.
You guys really didn't leave me with much. Holy smokes. Holy smokes. All right. I think I first just want to thank the working group because they really put together a fabulous package for us to be able to work through and to be able to create. Without it, I don't think I could have made a competent decision on this. So you guys really did an awesome job, and I appreciate it. And I know that sometime, hopefully in the long-distance future, it will be used again as a model for when Ms. Miller is ready to step down. So thank you both very much for that. That was an awesome package you guys put together. Not going to really reiterate everything that everyone said because I agree with all of it. Culture-wise, yeah, I mean, I really want to stress a student-focused school district and really just focused on student outcomes, student learning, relationships with families. Is she the person for that? Is she the right one for that? There's no way of knowing until we actually give her a chance, give her a shot. I'm not sure that we're going to find someone that is more loyal, that is more honest, more hardworking, that is willing to come here. I mean, really, there are great superintendents out there, and they have jobs. The ones that are, might be drifting around out there looking for a home, yeah, they are probably excellent and probably qualified. Are they more qualified than our homegrown, the one that knows us, the one that is a Black Knight, that is loyal to us? I don't think we're going to find anyone more qualified or more suited for Stoughton than our own Stoughton residents. That doesn't mean that we don't hold our superintendent accountable, no matter who that superintendent is. So I've talked to people. I know not everybody is excited for this appointment. I know that not everybody is jumping for joy, and some people have trepidation over this. I would say, if you have concerns, then hold her accountable. Tell her that you want to talk to her. Feel free. I've done it. I've done it with many superintendents and teachers and faculty and staff. So don't be afraid. She's very generous with her time. And I think that what you'll find is that if she doesn't have the answer, she will work with you to get the answers. But for me, for her, it's a yes, but that doesn't mean that it's a yes and then we just call it quits. It's a yes, and we are all going to work together to make Stoughton one where people want to send their children to this district and not one where we live here, so we have to send our kids here. We want people to want to send their kids to Stoughton because our schools really are fabulous, and I think she's going to bring us to a real student-focused, student-centered district. And so, yeah, I'm excited for her. I'm excited for her.
I want to echo that we have a candidate who not only wants the job of superintendent, but wants the job of superintendent of Stoughton Public Schools. And so that is no small thing. We like to thank Dr. Payetta for being one who agreed to come specifically to Stoughton Public Schools. And I think that's what we're seeing. Yes, yes. But we're seeing that. That's really what this town wants. That's what a lot of people have said. There's just so much positive feedback on, hey, you're identifying people within Stoughton and keeping it, identifying what's special about Stoughton and nurturing that. So,
I'd like to qualify that, finding Stoughton talent qualified
Yes.
for the job.
Yes, exactly.
The qualification comes from Stoughton, check, and done. So, no, it's a person who is highly qualified.
Correct. Thank you, Chris. Thanks for adding the point. Does anybody have anything else to add? All right, we have this motion on the table.
I
Oops.
would, just for future planning, if, in case anyone looks at these minutes next time down the road, we do this again. Usually when you're hiring someone into a role at this level, you don't do it based on just one interview. So maybe there's an introductory interview where the person presents their information, who they are, you give some broad-based questions, and then for the second interview, maybe you do the scenarios, and then the third, you hammer down in any areas to see, if you're not skilled in this, what's your plan for skilling up in this? And so I would have felt more comfortable, quite frankly, if this process had involved more than just one sit-down with Julie as a formal group.
I'll note that. Hopefully, we won't have to do that again soon, but I will make the notes.
And if I can add to that, there's actually 15 years from now an opportunity to do some really robust succession planning so that there's like a long ramp up and it's not just an interview process, but actually like getting to take some of the advantages that we have to doing this in a year ahead of time, to really thinking out like how do we build out a strong pipeline of folks who are positioned to become really effective leaders.
Again, thank you to the working group, and thank you to Ms. Miller for all of her time and all of her preparation. Thank you guys for all of your time, all of your thoughtful questions, all the thoughtful answers. I think it was fair that she got to drill us after we gave her those really hard scenarios and those really good questions, so I appreciate that. If there's no other discussion, we do have the motion on the table to appoint her pending successful contract negotiations as superintendent of Stoughton Public Schools starting July 1st, 2026. If there's no other discussion, are we ready to vote? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, that motion is carried 5-0. So at this point, I would like to ask that we pause the meeting so I can leave the room and call Ms. Miller to tell her the news, offer her the position. Please turn off your mics, and we'll take a 5 minutes break and be right. All right. Welcome back, everyone. I would like to announce that Ms. Juliet Miller has accepted the position of the superintendent of Stoughton Public Schools starting July 1st, 2026, pending successful contract negotiations. So yay, we're all very excited. Again, we had this great opportunity for her to kind of ramp up, do the entry plan, get to shadow and have some mentoring. So I will trust Dr. Baita today to help us with that, help plan that. At this point, we do need to negotiate with her, so it's not quite done yet. I would like to appoint Lindsay to negotiations with the superintendent. Everybody okay with that? All right, we're going to have some, yes.
Start typing, Lindsay.
Do we need to take a vote? I don't think so. Yeah, chair negotiations. But we will need to take a vote on the parameters, and so we'll go into executive session.
I thought anytime that we were making a committee for something, we had to make a.
Oops.
Forgot we were still live. Yeah, I thought that anytime that we had a committee, we had to vote on who was going to be on the committee.
It's not a committee per se. I'm just appointing her as point negotiator. But we can vote if you want. I mean, if people are more comfortable.
No, it's
I'm
fine. It
okay.
was just a point of.
No, always good to ask. Sometimes I forget to vote. I do love to vote, though, so.
I love to vote.
I know.
I love to vote.
All right. Before we get to the giggles too badly, I do want to point the next item on our agenda is executive session. But before we go into the executive session, just a couple of reminders. We do have a regular school committee meeting next Tuesday. That's March 11th at 7 p.m. They'll be here in the conference room at district offices at 31 Pierce Street. We're going to have some updates on the building project, specifically the educational aspect, modular classrooms, including possible classroom modulars at Wilkins and Jones, transportation, so get your feedback on the handbook and those things in before the meeting, and then our current superintendent's evaluation. So we can't, as you spoke, holding our superintendent accountable, we do need to do that with our current superintendent. And there is another meeting that I want you to be aware of, and that is Wednesday, March 12th at 7 p.m. We have our meeting with the Finance Committee. So get ready for that. Everybody get excited. That will be in the Great Hall over at Town Hall, so that will not be here in this one. We will be adjourning from our executive session, just as a note. So at this time, Yes, so we will have, in addition to, before FinCom and town meeting, we will have some office hours for Finance Committee and town meeting reps who would like to get a chance to dig into the budget a little bit further. I don't have the dates in front of me, so we'll get those out, publish them. If you guys would like to sit in and help, feel free, but obviously we can't have the whole committee there at once, but, maybe we can pick and choose some dates if anybody really wants to dig in. So those will be in March and April. So if people want to get a chance to ask us about specific items, about the new format, about what all these terms mean that we throw around, SOA, high needs, all of that, this is your chance to really come and ask us in detail. So with that news, at this point, we're going to pause and get ready to go in executive session.
I can make a motion to move into executive session and adjourn from there
Yes. All right, so.
without returning into regular session, open
Yes,
session.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. I think we may have to pause the mics. Or do we vote to go into executive session and then pause mics? Okay. Okay, so can I have a motion to go into executive session for the purposes listed in the agenda and from which we will adjourn without going back into regular session?
So moved.
All right, that was made by Lindsay.
Second.
Second by Chris. All right, it's been moved and seconded. Roll call. vote.
Aye.
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 All right, 5-0. So we're in executive session. We're going to pause for a moment, turn off mics. Say goodbye to Maureen.
Hi, everybody.